Welcome back, beautiful souls. My name's Annie Henderson. I'm a life coach here in North Texas, and today we're talking about negativity bias. Is this phrase already familiar to you? Quick question. Do you tend to think that you're a positive or a negative person? In previous videos, like the one that I'm going to link right up here, we talk about our reticular activating system and how it filters our world for us. There's a shirt in my merch section that says, your mind does what it thinks you want it to do. So if you're constantly focused on negativity or positivity, it will filter based on how you program your mind. So negativity bias, let's talk about that more. The simplest way to put it, and we'll dive in a little bit deeper, the simplest way to think about it is if you're going about your day and there's 10 positive, great things that happen, and then one negative. With negativity bias, right, we will focus on this one negative thing and kind of disregard all the positives that have happened that day because of this one negative thing, right? It's not 10 take away 1, there's still 9. We tend to focus on that negativity. So the negativity bias is our tendency not only to register negative stimuli more readily, but also to dwell on these events. So you might have heard it called positive negative asymmetry. And this negativity bias means that we feel the sting of rebuke more powerfully than we feel the joy of praise. Back when I had really low self-esteem and I was a people pleaser, I remember there was a point in my life where I would ask for feedback, and I would balance it out by saying, oh, could you tell me, 3 positives and 3, areas that I could work on about myself. And then people would give them to me, but I would really kind of be interested, not in a healthy way yet, but on these negative things. And I would write them down and I would just focus on them too much, would pretty much completely disregard the positive. How many of you do something like that? If you can relate to that, of just honing in and focusing and giving too much power to negativity, let me know in the comments. So for those of you still reading the news, I don't recommend it. And my theory behind that is, when was the last time you've read or watched the news and left feeling better and happier and more empowered? Usually not. So when you read the news, do you find yourself drawn to the more depressing clips or videos or articles? As humans, we tend to be impacted much more by negative events than by positive ones. And this negativity bias can influence how we feel, think, and act, and can have some less than desirable effects on our psychological state. So what does it look like? And how can we overcome it? Keep listening. So negativity bias refers to our proclivity to attend to, learn from, and use negative information far more than positive information. We can think of it as an asymmetry in how we process negative and positive occurrences to understand our world, one in which negative events elicit more rapid and more prominent responses than non-negative events. Where are my fellow teachers and educators? We notice this with students, right? You might, if any of you have kids or nephews or whatever, they're little geniuses, and they start to figure out that they can get faster attention and feedback from an adult or someone if it's negative, right? A lot of times, kids just doing their work and being quiet and just doing what they're supposed to do, it's expected, so they maybe don't get a ton of praise. So the students, that are getting all of this tension because of maybe acting out or saying something or doing something. Negativity bias can also explain why we often recall and think about insults more than compliments, respond more emotionally and physically to aversive stimuli, dwell on unpleasant or traumatic events more than pleasant ones, and focus our attention more quickly on negative rather than positive information in that school example that I just gave. So you might be wondering, oh, why are we this way? This is ridiculous. Why do we do this to ourselves? And like many things, it's an adaptive evolutionary function. So thousands of years ago, our ancestors were exposed to immediate environmental threats that we no longer need to worry about today. Predators, for example, and being more attentive to those negative stimuli played a useful role in survival. So again, one of those things we don't need anymore today. And I find this a lot with my clients. Sometimes we had tools, survival tools, that helped us growing up in maybe less than ideal situations. And now as an adult who has their own space and their own choices and decisions, we are still using some outdated tools and resources that helped us survive, but now we're able to choose better, to choose more intentional. We're not in as much danger. And if we think about it, news coverage doesn't help because it tends to be predominantly negative, right? So if you open a newspaper or you turn on the news, it's mostly going to be negative and fear-based. And that tends to sell, unfortunately, which is why I highly recommend go without the news, right? I promise if something major is going on, you will hear about it from someone on YouTube or TikTok or someplace else. So you might be wondering, how do I overcome this negativity bias that's just ruling my days where I'm focused on negativity? And you've heard me say this many times. It's going to start with awareness. Are you even aware that you have this tendency to focus on the negative? And if you are, then it's time for the next step, which is challenging the negativity bias. Challenging that negative self-talk, right? So when you hear it, instead of just going with it and agreeing with it, challenge it. So you might start by checking in with yourself throughout the day and your thoughts, and start to recognize any thoughts that are running through your mind, both helpful and unhelpful ones. So if it's 10 a.m. or maybe even right as you're waking up at 7 a.m., what's a helpful thought that I'm having? What's an unhelpful, maybe fear-based thought that I'm having right now? And you can also look at your own behaviors too for a better understanding of what's serving you and what isn't. And from here, you can start to tackle these head on, challenging them, replacing them with more useful ones. Once you become aware of your behavior or its consequences, then you can work backward to think about what led to them. What were you thinking before experiencing anger, resentment, or frustration? Was it negativity bias in action, perhaps? And how can you replace those thoughts with more positive ones? Another tool that you can use to help with this negativity bias and overcoming it is mindfulness tools. So mindfulness, like breathing, right? Box breathing, if you've never heard of that. 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and so on, just to calm your body, to ground you. Practicing mindfulness is one good way to become more attuned to your own emotions. Through guided meditations, which I do offer custom meditations. If anyone's interested, just go to my site, anniemhenderson.com. Through guided meditations, reflection, and other mindfulness interventions, you can start to observe your feelings and thoughts more objectively. Even more promising evidence comes from a 2011 study from Keegan and Shuk, who found an increase in positive judgments and higher level of optimism when participants practiced mindful breathing. Did you hear that? Not even meditation or something fancy, mindful breathing. So what if we just set our watch or an alarm to where we intentionally made time multiple times a day for mindful breathing? Wow. I feel like we can all do that. Who's up for it? If you are, let me know in the comments, and we can do it together. So compared to control groups, these participants performed better at tests where they were required to categorize positive stimuli, leading the researchers to suggest that mindfulness practice can have a significant positive impact on the bias. So guess what? This negativity bias video is going to have a part 2 because there's lots of cool, good, helpful things because most of the clients I have tend to have this negativity bias, including myself, right? So don't beat yourself up. Don't judge yourself for it, but do set your alarm to come back here next Monday for the next video about negativity bias and what you can start doing to work on countering it, right? How you can improve your outlook going forward. I promise you this is something that is worth investing your time in and your energy if you choose to move forward, if you choose to get better at this. It's going to take intention and no one can make you do it, but hopefully you want this growth for yourself. Like this video, leave a comment, come back and join us next Monday on the negativity bias part 2, and let me know in the comments what your takeaway was from this video. I hope it was helpful. Take care of yourself and start becoming this week, while you're waiting for the video for next week, work on your awareness, mindful breathing, and also challenging those negative self-talk moments that come up. And you can always come back and share how you're doing, how you're progressing, if you're starting to catch yourself more in the comments. I'll see you then.